How's it going, everybody? This is Ron Sparkman, and to you. And today we're speaking with Carmel Johnson, and she was the most recent High Seas commander. She's a STEM advocate, a space farmer. She was also featured on the Nat Geo TV series Mars, and she has a bachelor's in soil and water science and a master's in land resources and environmental science. So that's totally a mouthful. She had an amazing resume there. So, Carmel, how are you doing today? We're glad to have you on.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. There's certainly a lot to talk about. It took a while to even get through all the questions. There were so many. So let's go ahead and get started. What initially made you fall in love with science?
I've always been interested in science, and I think just growing up in a more rural area, science is just everywhere around you, and I think kids are even the most perfect scientists in themselves, and so we were always experimenting and blowing things up and getting creative for ways to entertain ourselves because we didn't have, I don't know, video games and whatnot when I was growing up. And so I've kind of just always been experimenting. And then it was really when I got to middle school, high school that I had a bunch of really, really great science teachers that encouraged me to go further than what they were teaching. And there were some great opportunities for out of the curriculum activities. And I went to science camp because I was a dork when I was in high school. And, I finally got to meet people that were my age that were also interested in the same topics as me. And then from there, it was like, you know what? College is where it's at. Like, this is where I'm going to be with people that are wanting to do the same things as me. And then from there, it's just been meeting more really interesting people, and people are way smarter than me because I'm not really that smart. They're also interested in their gauge. They want to do more and they want to do better with everything. And so, probably middle school, high school is the time that I finally was able to get the ball rolling in the direction that led me to where I am now.
That's amazing. And I think it's funny that you say that you're not that smart with multiple degrees. So I'm sure just made everybody at home feel bad. It's just, all right. So I have to have 4 degrees before I'm considered intelligent. So that works.
Well, no, I think it's easy to, it's good to feel smart in the stuff you do know, but I think being smart also means that that there's always somebody more intelligent than you out there. Yeah. And there's always someone that's going to know more about something. So, you don't have to feel bad about yourself for not knowing everything, because learning is super fun, and we get to learn all sorts of different things throughout our lives, and that's the best part about living.
And that's also the best part about science, is that we're always willing to admit that there are things we don't know. There's always new things to learn and new things to be excited about. And I think that's one of the beauties of science. And so when did you know that this is what you wanted to do for sure as a career? And how did you choose these particular sciences that you have expertise in?
I think it was definitely freshman year of high school when we had a field trip for one of the clubs I was in, and we were outside for the entire day collecting data on this stream that we were researching over the course of the whole time I was in high school. And I just remember sitting there in the woods being like, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I don't do exactly that right now, but I knew that I wanted to be outdoors, or I wanted to be collecting data, and I wanted to be doing science in the field. And so it was pretty obvious even from that point that I was like, yeah, this is exactly what makes me happy, what makes me passionate. So working in the field collecting data, yeah.
So working in the field collecting data is a kind of a far reach to what you ended up being involved with just this last year with the High Seas project. So how did you get involved with the project, and can you tell us a little bit about what High Seas is for those that may not know?
Yeah, so we had a generic application process from the High Seas mission, and we all got connected to it in different ways. Some people were already in the email process, and some people got referred by other people saying, oh yeah, you should actually check this out. And I was not really strongly considering it at the time that I was asked to apply. And then through the process of getting to interview and meet people and talk about the research possibilities, they're like, yeah, actually, this is totally up my alley. And so and people ask, why would you ever want to spend a year inside of a dome if you like being outside? But we got to go outside. We just had to wear a spacesuit. And the data that we were collecting while we were there was so different from anything else I've done before. It was also similar in some ways, but the landscape and the environment out there was so different that it was super exciting. And it was really interesting for all of us because it was totally, totally new. And it made us feel like we actually got to step out of our comfort zone for a little bit and do something that made us be better human beings as well. So it was a really incredible opportunity. You just got to apply. That's really what happens is you get different windows that show up, and you say, well, should I apply for this or should I apply for that? And just apply for all of it, and you never know, you might make it through.
It's kind of shocking how many people have had that experience. Just you know what, I just decided to throw my hat in the ring and see what happens, and you know what, I made it. They picked me.
Yeah.
One of the people that we interviewed a little bit earlier this year, or actually late last year, Dr. Juliana Hordeskic, she applied to be an astronaut and got to like the top 120. And for her, that was an amazing experience. It was the first time she had ever applied, and she got that far in. And, so that certainly made her a little happier about trying later. And she last year also applied, and she ended up being a Hera commander on one of their missions. So it's one of those things. It's just throw your hat in the ring, and you just never know. And speaking of commanders, you were not only selected to be a crew member, but you were selected as the commander of the mission. Can you tell us a little bit about the process and what people might need to know if they're interested in being involved in that project and maybe even commanding one of these missions?
So the selection process for the rest of the high seas missions has ended. If they get more funding, then there obviously would be negotiations for another mission. But as far as being selected for the commander of my mission, it was kind of a peer selection process, as well as the mission support and the researchers getting to select. And they don't tell you all the details about why they ask you to do the job that they ask you to do, but essentially we all got to vote on who we thought should be on the crew, as well as who should be the commander, would have which roles on the crew. And then after that process, then all the researchers said yay or nay about our decisions on it. So we at least got to have some say in it. I didn't vote for myself. I actually said I didn't want to do it. And then I guess enough other people said I should that I was like, well, I guess if you guys think I should, then maybe I will consider it. So,
well, I mean, I think being humble is probably a good thing, and a commander that's willing to listen to what other people have to say. And when you're looking at having the idea of, a Mars analog mission of where you're going to be gone for a year, and some of these people are going to be gone for years, they got to be able to make firm decisions, but also be able to listen to other people in their crew. And I think that the one that probably is yelling and screaming like, I got to do it, I have to be in charge, probably is not going to be the one you want to really be in charge.
No, yeah, I generally don't like being in charge. I mean, I'm decent at it, I guess, but I generally prefer if somebody else is, just because it's a lot easier if somebody else is in charge. Mm-hmm. But it was a great opportunity to put myself in that tougher position of having to be the leader, but also, you're still a crew member and you still have to meet your basic needs as well. And so it was extremely challenging, that's for sure, but it was also one of the best experiences I've had of my life. And even if it was hard and I may or may not want to do it ever again, it was definitely the best thing that I've ever done.
That's incredible. So what sort of preparation and research went into, maybe even just your role as commander, or even just as a crew member, period? I don't know. How long did you guys have in between when the crew was selected and you being chosen as commander, and then you guys going in for a year?
So we were selected, I want to say, in early July, and then we went into the dome end of August. So we had almost 2 full months of knowing that we would be on the crew, and then a lot of that time everybody else was trying to really just wrap up their lives. And so beforehand we had done a lot of the psychological testing. We had gone on a trip with the National Outdoor Leadership School to see if we could hack it as, backpacking in the outdoors, since camping has a lot of similarities with going to space. And so once we finished that, then we had the whole finalization process. And then we didn't have specific training for being a crew member, because they really want to see what do you just do. But we still had to think, okay, I have to end my job and I need to figure out what I'm going to do afterwards, kind of. And then how do I wrap up things with family members or with friends that I want to see sometime before I leave for an entire year. So a lot of that time was spent both working and trying to pick up the chaos that is going to be the life you leave behind, and try not to leave it too messy before you go.
And I know that's going to be interesting, leaving a life and then coming back to a life a year later. And there was a lot of things that you guys simulated. Did you guys simulate the time delay that you would have for information? So if you were going to Mars, there's what is it, somewhere around nearly 20 minutes of a time delay. Did you guys have that as well?
Yeah, we did have the time delay. So we didn't have the internet, but we did have email through a server and a delay process that NASA set up for us. So a lot of people don't understand, how can you have email but not have the internet? It's possible. They blocked it all. It was crazy. We had 20 minutes for the time that it take for a message to leave simulated Mars, get to Earth. and then someone on the other end would have to decide to respond to it, and then it would take 20 minutes to get back to us. And the actual distance between Earth and Mars does range less than 20 minutes, but we kind of went for worst case scenario. Then you don't have anyone dealing with, oh, where's Mars actually at right now? Is it 8 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Mm-hmm. It's just blanket worst case scenario. This is how they're going to deal with it. And you just get used to it. It falls into a routine, and you say, this is my life, and I don't expect to receive a response in any less than an hour.
Yeah, so you just got to break yourself down and just realize that everything is not going to be as easy as it was, a year ago.
Yeah. It's just different. I wouldn't say it's easier or harder necessarily, because I think having people respond to emails quicker is maybe a little bit harder, because I don't have time to write a response before they're shooting things back at you again. So it's just an adjustment, and you live life. It's just the norm for you. You live life as it is and deal with it as you go.
And, this is just one of many things that was Mars-like. So how exactly was this mission like a mission to Mars, other than, of course, the 20-minute emails?
So we also had to wear a spacesuit if we were going outside. And the spacesuit weighed about 50 pounds, and it was a big constraint for us to move around. You didn't have the flexibility or the ability to walk around easily. I like to call it the sensory deprivator, because you can't see very clear out the face shield. You can see a little bit, but it's not crystal clear like your eyes can see. You can't hear anything other than the fans. You can't smell anything other than yourself. You can pick up rocks, but you can't feel them. And so losing all of your senses is really quite limiting when you're trying to orient yourself and walk across a rocky landscape. We also ate only freeze-dried or dehydrated ingredients, and with that we could cook whatever we wanted to, like ice cream or lasagna and tacos, but we had to start with the base ingredients that would be shelf-stable. And we also practiced water conservation, because we only had 1,000 gallons of water to use over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And so we really had to conserve water, reuse it, and recycle it as much as we possibly could in order to live as sustainably as you would have to on Mars.
That's an incredible. It sounds like an incredible experience, and it shows you just how important really a lot of the things that we take for granted are. And I know, being away from it for so long, did it really matter when you got back to it, or were you rushing to get like your first fresh pizza or cheeseburger?
We didn't really rush for, I don't know, just traditional American food when we came out of there. We were deprived of fresh fruits and vegetables for quite a bit of the time, so we were excited to have pineapple and strawberries and blueberries again. But for the most part, we ate really, really well, and a lot of the crew members had said they've never eaten better in their lives, because they were eating fresh homemade meals every single day. And it wasn't takeaway food. It was delicious, and the quality of ingredients that we had to begin with were incredible. So I think we ate pretty well, and I actually sometimes miss the ingredients, because everything's already cut up for you and it's already cooked, so all you have to do is add hot water, and that's kind of convenient at times.
Yeah, it sounds like it's actually kind of easy. So that way you guys can just get back to work, and that's actually something maybe people don't think about, is that, when we go to Mars, if you can go ahead and have all your foods ready for you, which they talk about, they're going to send the food years ahead of time, that's going to be prepackaged and ready, so they can just open it, eat it, and get right back to work. When you've only got a specific amount of time, especially on those first Mars missions, they're probably going to want to get as much done as possible. So that kind of makes sense. And so now that you've crewed a mission, is there anything that would be anything that maybe was missing, or what maybe you have an idea of your ideal mock-up of a crew for Mars would be?
I mean, ideally, if you were going to send a full Mars mission into a practice beforehand, you would want to practice in a place where you had lower gravity or zero gravity maybe, or you would have all of the systems in place for the technology. So, yeah, I mean, it would be perfect to practice that way beforehand. If that's possible, then that would be great. But until then, we have these really great simulations where we can study all of the psychological components of it, and then we can also study how the urine recycler works, and this, that, and the other thing for all the technological aspect. And then putting it all together at the end is the fun part, where you get to say, all right, now it's real, and now we can possibly send people with this to Mars. And that would be really exciting. I would be in favor of practicing on the space station beforehand. because you could have a certain pod of it where you could, be in zero gravity, like you might be going towards Mars, or even implement some artificial gravity on the space station. And maybe it's a third gravity, you get to pretend like you are on Mars. But the only real simulation for it is going to be going there, because you're never going to be in that same dangerous situation as you will once you go. So beforehand, it'd be really cool to get to practice at least to the ability that you can to fully simulate most of it.
And, ISS has really been a big part of NASA and their journey to Mars. And one of the things that both of you kind of got to do was a little bit of space farming. In one of our recent episodes, we spoke with Jeff and Melissa Purnell, who are from Galactic Farms. And they have developed a system that will allow you to, vertically grow different types of foods. And where the ISS grew in space, you guys at High Seas actually used their system. So what was it like to space farm using their system?
Yeah, they have a couple systems now too, which is really exciting, and it was awesome. It was pretty mindless. I mean, other than setting it up, obviously there's some amount of time commitment in setting up a system, but once it was going and working correctly, then I just left it alone, and we turned it on in the morning, we turned it off at night, and it just grew vegetables, and it was really nice to just see them grow and not have to maintain them. Definitely part of the aspect of gardening is the work involved with it. And so if you have a fairly decent amount of input in setting up the system, as long as it can maintain itself, then that's beneficial for the rest of the crew, because then you don't have to continue maintaining it. And so I was so thankful that we had those systems, and I would definitely, I kind of want to steal one from them and just grow it in my house right now. But I think I'll have to talk with them about getting another system. And I know that you guys are going to be getting one of their systems as well. So I'm excited to see how well it works for you guys.
Yeah. I'm actually going to steal it. I'm going to be growing one at home, and I'm going to be documenting it. And we actually have one of their prototypes. I think actually it was the one that they used with you guys, and we have it at the Space Foundation here in Colorado Springs, and we're using it as part of what we're doing for the Summer of Discovery here. So it's they're kind of popping up everywhere, and space farming is going to be one of those big things that, as we mentioned, there's going to be all this frozen food and all this prepackaged food that's sent, not frozen, but prepackaged food that's sent. But that growing food there is going to be just something that's major. And so was there any other tips that you'd like to give people that maybe you're looking for a way to learn how to space farm, maybe for the future Martians that might be listening?
I think one of the biggest limiters that we had during the year was the amount of light that was available. And so being able to figure out what species or what system grows best with limited light conditions is really important. And I don't have it all figured out, and I don't know that anybody does. So having lots of people study this would be great, because we can see how different species in different conditions, different environments, different temperatures, all the different variables you might possibly have, even testing different radiation amounts, given that if we're going to grow species on Mars, then we would have a radiation component as well. Trying to figure out how best to grow these species, and maybe they aren't what we would traditionally think of as food, but they might be something different. They might be a totally different methodology that we've never even thought of before. But the technology is advancing so quickly that what really might seem as a stupid idea isn't actually stupid anymore, because it's changing so fast that when I talk to the high school kids or the middle school kids, I'm actually kind of just like pumping them for ideas, because they come up with the most amazing concepts, and I'm like, well, that's not stupid. You might think it is, but it's not. That's a great idea, and we should try it. Like, why not try it?
And I think that's one of the wonderful things about kids. We certainly at the Space Foundation, we really do get a lot of really cool people that come in there. I'm just a volunteer there, but some of the questions I've got from kids are inspiring. In what it is that they have just that sense of wonder that so many of us, the adults, normally are very specific of what type of rocket did this and that, and you'll have a little girl that'll ask, "Is there candy in space?" It's just those really really interesting questions that the kids always come up with, and they're willing to test things and come up with some inventive ideas. So it sounds like you had there was really a lot going on. So what was your biggest triumph, and what was your biggest challenge of the mission?
I'd say definitely the biggest triumph of the mission is that we ended up with 6 people at the end, and that no one got kicked out the airlock. We're all still civil to each other, And like that's the big payout at the end, is that whatever we went through during the year, no matter the struggles we had, we all were working towards getting through at the end. And so it really speaks to, I mean, what is the triumph of, even if you have 6 people that may not agree on everything, which is never going to be the case, you're still going to be able to work together. And if you have resistant enough people, or resilient enough, sorry, you will be able to succeed in the work that you do, and you'll be able to move forward. And nobody really cares if you argue about stuff. It's about how you move past it, how you continue to work together the next day. That's important. And so, I mean, you can have a disagreement about who knows what, but as long as you can still work together tomorrow, that's what matters. And that's what it's all about, is working together in Mars, in like in an isolation condition, but also here on Earth. It really was interesting to see, like, why do we even have political differences? We're all the same human beings. Like, we all live here on the same planet. It's absurd that we, can't see eye to eye on certain things.
And it sounds very similar to what we hear with a lot of people that actually go to space, astronauts. Ron Guerin talks about the orbital perspective, and a lot of different astronauts say the same thing, is once you see the world from space and once you see it without borders, it's amazing how small this little blue dot is whenever you look out at everything else that's around it. And it really kind of sounds like you answered what was going to be my next question, which is what you thought the most important thing would be for a mission like this. And it sounds just like, collaboration, working with each other, and really kind of keeping with that. And so I know that you are an avid hiker. So it's interesting kind of how many mountaineers are also interested in being astronauts and getting involved in stuff like this. So what do you think creates that kind of unique sense of wonder for exploration in people that, hiking is amazing to them? They want to go to space. They want to do all these things. What is it that maybe sparks that in some of us?
I think I read an article, and I'm trying to remember who the author is now, but it was, it went further than that. It wasn't just like avid hikers that are interested in space, but it's like all scientists that are interested in extreme activities or like extreme exercise, like whether it's marathon running or, hiking mountains or whatever you want to name it. But it's more like how you use your brain for science, and for hopefully good science. But, you're thinking so critically about things in your work environment that you also need that break, or the ability to release and process everything in another avenue. And physical exercise is the best way to do that. Yep. So I don't really know if that's completely true or not, but I definitely see that with almost everybody I know in science, is that they're also really interested in the outdoors and doing extreme environment activities, because, well, we think it's fun, but not everybody else does. So I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, I would definitely be outside every day if I could.
Yeah, and maybe it's that challenge on top of a challenge on top of a challenge. Like, I'm going to push myself to the absolute limits, and then I just want to go a little bit further. And I think that's going to be those type of people that are really going to be the ones that make Mars happen. And we actually we saw a little bit of that in the TV show that they just did not too long ago, Nat Geo's Mars, and you guys were featured in that. So we got to see a little bit of that. We got to see like the Galactic Farms set up there.
Yeah.
So you guys had some really cool things going on. Can you tell us about that experience and what that was like?
Of living in the dome, I mean, it was incredible. It was definitely like one of the smallest spaces. I've lived with 6 other people for a year, but you kind of start to realize that you don't actually need that much space or that much stuff. And Americans in particular have a lot of stuff everywhere. And I think about that as cleaning out, every time you move, you're like, why do I have stuff? And like, we each brought one backpack with us with our clothes for the year, and most of us found that we had too many clothes because we wore the same thing every day, and we didn't need to have a variety. We weren't going out. We weren't, dressing up fancy for anybody for any reason. And so it was okay to wear workout clothes and wool long underwear every day, because why does anybody else care? But yeah, I mean, it was so cool to get to. We were pretty much living completely off the grid. We had amazing food. We were practicing conservation practices that a lot of people's grandparents knew as everyday life, and we were getting to experience that by requirement for the first time in our lives. I mean, like, at my house, I can turn on the faucet and have water running instantly for as long as I want it to, and that's not the case in most of the world. And so it was really cool to see that from a different perspective, as we were 6 people from fairly privileged backgrounds, but we were living as if we were not that way. And it really brought back down to what is the basic need for humanity. And what do we really need to survive? We don't need social media. We don't necessarily need all these other things that are privileges, really. But we need food and water and shelter, and we need to be able to get along and be able to work together. So it was really humbling at times because I don't necessarily make all the best decisions, and neither does anybody else. But we all had to work together, and we had a common goal. So we were in it together. We were definitely working towards the same thing, and hopefully we all ended up on the same side of the airlock at the end of the day.
That's really good. That's always kind of a running joke in TV shows that we're going to kick you out the airlock. I mean, I don't think I've heard of one other than maybe Star Trek. Like Star Trek never really went the violent route with that. We're going to kick somebody out, but we certainly heard it in plenty, and it's nice to see that how important it really is that everybody works together, and I think that's really the only way that we're going to get to Mars. But my fellow co-host Bill Hargerator and I spoke about that at last year's Mars Society convention, and we talked about the hybrid approach Mars missions of working together. Why isn't anybody really coming together to try and figure these things out? And it really does seem like teamwork is going to be the way that we get there. So maybe what is it that maybe the bigger overarching, the bigger organizations can learn from what you guys did? That maybe they could kind of, that teamwork that you guys use, what's a lesson that maybe you could give to them to say, hey, listen, if we work together on this is going to happen a whole lot sooner than if we each go about it our own way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from each company, like working together, and I know SpaceX is particularly good about wanting to collaborate with outside people about that. But in general, it's not even just companies collaborating. It's about countries collaborating and realizing that we're all one human species living on the same rocky planet, hurling through space. And if we don't start getting along and don't start working together, then the success or failure of our entire species is at jeopardy. And so if we can't put our differences aside, and whatever your religious or your skin color or political background is, I don't care who you are. You can be purple polka dots for all I care. Like, I mean, I think you might have a serious medical condition at that point in time. But other than that, we are all human beings, and we all know compassion and love and caring. And we all like to eat food and drink water, and we all want to live on to the future, and we all want to have grandkids for the most part. So if we want to perpetuate the human species, I mean, that requires you to buy into that idea too. But if we want to make that a goal, then we have to start working across country boundaries, because we are one planet and we only get the one opportunity. Earth is beautiful, and we have the ability to live here freely without having to create food, water, and shelter. Mars is not that way. Mars is hard. It's really difficult to live there. In fact, we don't know of anything that does live there yet. And so if we want to put humans there, we are going to have to figure out how to live sustainably here first. Otherwise, we have no chance in heck of getting it under control there.
Agreed. And I think this is something that really kind of reaches out to the STEM fields and the STEAM fields, is that it doesn't matter who you are as a scientist. You can be, it doesn't matter from what country you're from, male or female, anything like that. It's really about, if we can communicate this science and we can get it out to people, so many people connect through that. It's a vast array of heroes. There are teenagers that inspire people through science, and there are people that are 70 years old that are doing it. I don't know how old Michio Kaku is, but, or I know Stephen Hawking's up there. And what are they doing? They're still inspiring people every day. Yeah. So STEM advocacy and science communication has been a really, really big thing about connecting a lot of people together. And I know it's something that you actually work on as well. So can you tell us a little bit about your STEM work and maybe how that kind of combines a little bit what you're talking about, how you kind of reach out to people and share that message of, connection and teamwork and us all being, one species on one planet?
Yeah, so a lot of the work I do right now is with school groups in, I would say, elementary school through high school age. Just being in the classroom, being present, and teaching them about something that they may not know about. And I don't have to have done anything fancy in my life, but I'm physically present, and I am showing them that another adult beyond their teachers and beyond their parents cares about them and cares about their education. And so teaching them about really cool things, and luckily they still think I'm cool right now, so that's, I'm using that to my advantage. But just teaching them how to explode things, or I mean, within reason, of course, but teaching them from a different aspect, because I know we all get to what
I say controlled. You got to make sure it's
control.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, I'm learning things from kids every single day when I get to talk to them, because they all have ideas that are different than mine, and kids think in different ways than adults do, and so it's really interesting to see how their brains work, and the concept that they come up with. They, at first they're kind of thinking, oh, this isn't real, I don't know, this isn't something that's right. I'm like, actually, you're onto something. That is so cool. And let's talk about this further, because who am I to say you're wrong? And I mean, one of the most inspirational people to me is my nephew, because he's 7 now, and he comes up with the most wacky ideas ever. And I'm like, actually, dude, you're really smart. He starts talking about black holes and white holes and green holes. And who am I to say that that's wrong? There might be green holes out there for all we know. But I think he's referring to something else. And just to see how their brains morph and change over time is incredible. And I want to, be able to, if I can inspire one kid to go into science or to make the world a better place, I hopefully got a kid today to turn off the tap when he's drinking or when he's brushing his teeth. I really hope that happens. Just make an impact on one person's life, then they can make an impact on somebody else's life. So I think it's more, besides the content that you're teaching, and a lot of people are interested in teaching one specific kind of STEM content, it's just a matter of being present and being there and showing them that you're there and you're invested in them. And then, if they have questions, like, let's help you get to wherever in the world you want to go. You don't even have to stay in science for all I care. But if you want to do something, I'm here to get you wherever it is you want to go. So, that's our job as adults, is to help the next generation.
And all right, you know what? That's perfect then. So there's a scientist, there's an innovator, there's a kid that's coming up to you that wants to do what you do. What is your advice to them in a couple of words? How would you inspire them to continue along the path that they're on? To kind of keep them going.
I would say write down your ideas and put them in like hard print, because you might forget them. Or hopefully you won't forget them, but like physically put it somewhere so you can remember and you can keep working on it. And then the next advice is just to learn everything you can about everything. And it might not be something that you think is relevant to it, but biology relates to chemistry, which relates to environmental science and climate change and geography and geology and volcanism. And that's just like the earth, let alone politics and economics and math. And it's all interconnected. And we put them in boxes and we say, oh, we're going to teach you math, we're going to teach you English, we're going to teach you science, but it's all interconnected. And if we can start working on developing all of it together, then I think we'll have an easier time of moving forward as well. So it's pretty much learn everything you can about everything, and then you'll have all the opportunities that you would like to apply for.
And that sounds like perfect advice, especially even somebody that wants to be a Martian. Like, you're going to really need to know a little bit of everything. So speaking of which, now that you've completed the mission, for fun, we got to know, do you still want to go to Mars? Do you want to go to Mars? Did you want to go to Mars before? And do you want to go to Mars now?
If I wanted to go to Mars or not before the mission started, but I think afterwards I was like, yeah. And I think all of the crew was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. We would totally survive if we were going to Mars. We weren't really thinking in the hype of everything about all the technical aspects about it. And so since then, I think I would go if they stuck the landing like 10 times first. If you can go and get people there, stick the landing, and even have a return trip, then I would be more interested in it. Until then, I don't necessarily need to be that person going, and I think I might be a little too old anyways. But I'm perfectly content living on Earth for the rest of my life and helping other astronauts get there. And if I could go to the space station or an asteroid, that'd be really sweet too. But until then, I will just do whatever I can here to help make astronauts' lives better in the future, and maybe hopefully figure out some of the plant growth systems for getting them there.
And it actually, your answer reminds me a little bit about what Neil deGrasse Tyson said recently. He said that if Elon Musk sent his mom to Mars and brought her back, then he would go. So yeah, I guess that's a pretty good thing. If once we figured it out and we're for sure, I don't know. I think I'd be down for being part of that first group. Let's see if I can get the $250,000 together between now and the first time he starts sending people. But So one, we really appreciate you coming on today. Can you tell us a little bit about where we can find you on social media? If you have a website, anything like that, so people can contact you if they want to, pick your brain a little bit.
I am generally trying to just stick to email and phone calls right now because I kind of despise social media, even though I know it's a necessary evil. So I do have a Facebook and a Twitter, but I rarely ever post anything to either of them. So I'm trying to like phase out social media, and I hope everybody else does the same. But yeah, I have an email address, carmel.e.johnston, JOHNSTON @gmail.com. And I generally respond fairly quickly, and that's the best way to get a hold of me because I don't check Twitter or Facebook very often. So
awesome, and we will make sure to we will drop that in there, and we will actually add it on the Red Planet Radio site as well. So Carmel, thank you so very much for coming on today and answering all these questions, and I'm sure you've sparked a lot of people's interest that maybe want to do a Mars analog mission someday of their own, and maybe we'll see High Seas get a couple more missions, and maybe I'll drive myself in there for a year or so. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
And guys, we'll see you all in the next episode.